got my monster here. Got my script right open. I was supposed to be in drag for this, but I didn't want to do that anymore. So this is what you're getting. Let's begin. One of my favorite segments of Drag Race is just episode 1's talent show. So the first episode of every season, they'll have all of the drag queens, usually about 14 of them, line up in front of RuPaul and perform a talent. So you can either dance or you can sing. I know there's one person who did puppets. But my personal favorite has always been season 16, Megamas. It is so bad. I love the dissertation RuPaul this year, but she does not care at all. But it got me thinking, why should we protect Queer Eye? I mean, is drag really all that? Or is it just inflammatory for the sake of being inflammatory? Naturally, it all comes back to the patriarchy. So, for this video, we only have 10 minutes, so we don't have enough time to discuss everything that I have to say about the patriarchy. There's a lot. But we'll try to answer 3 main questions. A, what's the patriarchy? B, what is drag? And C, what do I do? Question 1. What's the patriarchy? Wikipedia defines the patriarchy as a social system in which positions of authority are primarily held by men. It dictates that to be a man is to have power, and thus, a woman cannot have that power, or if she does want that power, a woman has to work that much harder to live up to a certain standard to get the power inherent of men. How many times have you heard someone say in the workplace, you should smile more? Being good at being a woman is actually just impossible. But don't take it from me, take it from America Ferrera in her iconic Barbie monologue.
You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard, it's too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. And it turns out...
She's right, women exist at a crossroads of 2 contradictions. They must be both modest and sexual. They should look like they have a full face of makeup done, but at the same time it should be done in a God-fearing way. They should be beautiful without effort. Women are forced into a box that gets ever skinnier and ever prettier and ever more perfect. Men suffer from their own expectations. The University of Arizona brought in 200 men and gave them all arbitrary masculinity scores. In this study, they found that the lower their scores, the more they began to isolate themselves socially. They began to reject intimacy with friends and family because they associated it with femininity, or rather, they associated it with weakness. This is a phenomenon we like to call machismo, or a lot of other people call it toxic masculinity. It exists because we define masculinity not by what it is, but rather by what it isn't. Men from an early age are taught how not to talk, how not to dress, how not to feel. The great Terry Crews put it best when he called it a cult of masculinity. We worship this idea of what a man is. Those that buy into this cult of masculinity, they treat women poorly, but in their eyes, to be a man who fails to be a man, to be gay, is worse. And of course, what's scarier than drag? Which brings us to question 2. What's drag? Drag is queerness at its loudest. Wikipedia defines it as a performance of exaggerated femininity, masculinity, or other forms of gender expression. Today we'll be talking specifically about drag queens, though drag kings do exist. Typically cisgender gay men who cross-dress. Drag queens originally were intended to deconstruct what a woman was, but any video that mentions drag needs to acknowledge the multi-million-dollar elephant in the room, RuPaul. As we all know, RuPaul is America's favorite drag queen.
A drag queen!
Sorry, RuPaul is America's favorite queen of drag, and she brought drag to the mainstream. Starting in 2009, her show RuPaul's Drag Race showcases larger-than-life drag queens competing for the chance to be America's next drag superstar, and exposed millions to the world of drag as well as non-gender conformance. Competitors have gone on to become actual superstars, with Trixie Mattel, Violet Chachki, and Hawaii's own Sasha Colby. The issue with Drag Race is the version of drag it presents. To make Drag Race more palatable to a wider audience, it focuses on the queens who are best at creating the illusion of turning a cisgender gay man into a tall, curvy, biological woman. They're called glamazons, or fishy queens. Don't Google it, trust me. The drag that I want to talk about right now takes us back to the 80s specifically. So, if you've interacted with me on any respect, you know that I have a special hatred for Ronald Reagan, and this is almost entirely because of how he handled the AIDS crisis. So it was called the gay disease, and around 50% of the people who were affected by it were gay men, despite making up only about 2% of the population. Yet the government ignored these people for years. This is typically linked to the Reagan's own negative feelings towards queer Americans, with members of Reagan's own cabinet having been recorded mocking the deaths of gay people from the disease. World-famous Hollywood heartthrob Rock Hudson contracted the disease, and upon requesting help from the Reagans to get an experimental life-saving treatment, was ignored simply because it was the gay disease. To put this into perspective, it's like if Biden refused to send aid to a dying Jacob Elordi because the way he was dying was too gay. It's an extremely depressing situation. But why am I bringing up AIDS right now? The AIDS crisis really just compounded our negative feelings towards queer people and made it much more easy to stigmatize them, and this is where drag queens come in. This is baby RuPaul. RuPaul was considered a term called genderfuck at the time, which is a type of drag that mixed femininity and masculinity into a single performance, to a single identity, to fuck gender. RuPaul really starts to blow up around the 90s, and he uses this platform that he gains to speak up for those who were affected by AIDS or those who didn't want to fit into the cookie-cutter, straight guy, super masculine idea that society insisted upon all men being. The thing that made Roop my favorite Paul brother was not his show or his modeling or his music, but this interview he held with drag and trans prostitutes on public television in 1992. Historically, queer people have consistently been sexually victimized, and as a result of this, hooking became the best way that many queer people, gay people, and trans people, as well as drag queens, were able to actually make a living if they were insistent on being out.
When you were a little girl, what did you want to be when you grew up?
A nurse. And now I'm a hooker.
I'm really heartbroken by this specific segment of the interview just because of how sad it is, but also it gives me hope because I realize that RuPaul was working to change this. There are hundreds of examples of historical drag queens who I could have chosen for this specific spotlight. Think Marsha P. Johnson, the first brick at Stonewall. Think Lady Bunny, who was a close friend of RuPaul's, who helped organize Wigstock, which helps queer people and drag queens actually get together to have a big festival. Think of Divine, who was the inspiration behind Ursula, and is one of the most iconic drag queens ever. The reason I choose RuPaul specifically is because of her evolution. She starts as the person breaking down these gender roles. She's poor, she knows exactly how we feel, and she is now one of the richest, most well-known drag queens out there. She's the richest and one of the most well-known queer people out there. We know that she has things to say about gender, but those gender roles are also enforced by the exact kind of people who watch her show, by the specific types of drag they want, and by the rest of Hollywood. Throughout the decades, drag has stayed messy and unapologetically queer. We need homebrew drag. Which brings me to my third and final question. What do I do? To prepare myself for this video, I interviewed local queens Candy Shell and Tara Way, and they described their drag as a pure expression of joy, a way to explore gender rather than escape it. While it may be outwardly accepted locally, drag is still heavily stigmatized, and yet they bring it straight to campuses and local events. In fact, I went to their drag bingo just a few weeks ago. It was a few months ago at this point of filming, but when I wrote the script, it was a week ago. Young people are seeing alternatives to the rigid roles being pushed onto them. They fight an uphill battle, but it's a battle worth fighting. RuPaul once said, "You're born naked, the rest is drag." He's right. Gender is drag, clothes are drag, the roles we're forced into are all drag. Yet, if the only acceptable drag is a MAGA hat for boys and ankle-length dresses for women, then what's the point? You're no longer expressing yourself, you're conforming to a system you have no say in. Men and women both suffer from these intense gender roles, and the only way to stop that suffering is by breaking them. While I'm not saying that every man watching this video should put on a dress and makeup and start voguing, I am saying that every man should step out of their comfort zones to try things they may have written off as feminine. Don't live in fear. Try on eyeliner, try a Pilates class, write a poem. By breaking the idea of what the perfect man should be, we open the door for what any man can be. There's freedom in that. RuPaul once said, "You're born naked, the rest is drag." He's right. Gender is drag, clothes are drag, the roles we're forced into are all drag. Yet, if the only acceptable drag is a MAGA hat for boys and ankle-length dresses for women, then what's the point? You're no longer expressing yourself, you're conforming to a system you have no say in. Men and women both suffer from these intense gender roles, and the only way to stop that suffering is by breaking them. While I'm not saying that every man watching this video should put on a dress and makeup and start voguing, I am saying that every man should step out of their comfort zones to try things they may have written off as feminine. Don't live in fear. Try on eyeliner, try a Pilates class, write a poem. By breaking the idea of what the perfect man should be, we open the door for what any man can be. There's freedom in that. Likewise, women can look to drag to see the parts of themselves that maybe get discouraged. Reading or gossiping about competition, embracing the sexuality of your body, even not being straight or cis or whatever else. By being so far in one direction, drag queens let us explore these ideas of ourselves. If you need proof of how good drag can be for you, take a look at any punk. By not fitting in, they not only empathize with others more, but they understand themselves. A lot of punks are so much happier than any perfect man or perfect woman I've met because they aren't living for anyone but themselves. Drag lets us critically examine the rule. Drag lets us critically examine the rules that we live by, and in the end reveals it's all pointless. When a person can be whatever they want, look however they want, dress however they want, how do we separate man from women? The answer that drag queens give is, it doesn't matter, only who you are does. So, Megami, as talentless as her performance may have seemed, is right. Protect queer art. It may just protect you.